Sure. Oh, thank you. I guess Lori's here in the back in the behind the scenes. Welcome everybody. This is a one of our weekly rather Monday night calls. The Cortese and the Empire Circle team welcome you. Um, this evening we're doing something a little different, and we hope to, with your encouragement and feedback, do this on a regular basis. We're highlighting some of the research from the Juice Plus Company. So the Juice Plus Company has been around for 50 years, and has been famous for pioneering plant powders, famous for being the innovator and pioneer in the field of functional food and plant powders. And alongside that pioneering technology and vision, they have been smart enough to do research for the last 30 years to prove all sorts of things like we're going to talk about this evening: bioavailability, that these powders get into your body and into your cells. So we're going to highlight some of that tonight without further much ado. And if you are new to us and to our community, I would ask that you get back with the person who invited you for any details that we don't cover this evening, and for more information about what we are going to cover, Dr. Candace and I this evening. So we're gonna get started with that very brief introduction. We're gonna get started on talking about tonight some polyphenols. Polyphenols is apparently a new buzzword. To me, it's an old buzzword, but it's become a hot topic. So we thought we would clarify and explain some of the newest findings and really very recent research on polyphenols, and why they are so important in our life, in our health, and also in our Juice Plus world and in our research based. So I'm going to share my slides for just a minute, but actually
And
first I want to just introduce my colleague here.
while you're doing that, I want to introduce you officially, Dr. Sachs.
We're
We're
thinking the
introducing
same.
we're
Go for it.
introducing each other tonight. So Dr. Tamara Sachs is an MD. She trained at Mount Sinai and Yale University, and she was an emergency room doctor and then a primary care physician until she discovered functional medicine over 20 years ago. And that's the kind of doctor that everybody I know is looking for today. She practices medicine on a part-time but very excellent basis, and then part-time as a Juice Plus educator. A lot of effort goes into that, and a leader of her presidential marketing director team across the country. So we have such a distinguished guest in Dr. Tamara Sachs tonight.
Thank you, Candace. I could say the same about you, and I think I will. Let me just see if I can move this thing down out of the way. Can you all see the screen, the slide, the colorful slide? Perfect. So
Yes.
Dr. Candace Corson, who I'm just delighted to be on this call with tonight, trained at Yale University, sorry, both Yale College and Yale Medical School. And then she went on to do her family medicine residency at the University of Rochester in New York. She's been in the medical field for over 50 years, and has done multiple different things, including nutritional medicine and functional medicine, as well as volunteer work in very important areas in indigenous clans. She's got four sons. Oh my goodness. And she's a grandmother now, and has been involved with the Juice Plus Company as a national marketing director for over 22 plus years. So we're both experienced medical doctors that have aligned ourselves with this company and this product because of, I think, for me at least, the research, the integrity of the product, the way it's made, but especially the research. So let's share some of that with you tonight. And let's get started with a new topic for us, I think, polyphenols. So let's talk a little bit about what polyphenols are, where we get them, and why they're so important and why they relate to our research. We're going to talk specifically tonight about three of our 51 published studies. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail. We're going to make them brief and hopefully very understandable and important for you all to understand why they matter to our health and your health. And so let's start with what are polyphenols. I bet you every single one of you have eaten a polyphenol today, because they are everywhere. They're in all of our plant foods. And why aren't my slides advancing? Hang on a minute. Technical issues. There we go. There we go. So polyphenols are in almost every fruit, vegetable, and berry, and in a lot of other foods. They're in spices and herbs as well. Excuse me. They're a very large group of compounds that are found in plant foods, but they are the most colorful. They have the distinction of being the most colorful of all the plant compounds. And so you'll recognize them in things that are bright orange and bright red and purple, right? Green is usually the chlorophyll. But for example, in the fall, at least where I live in the Northeast, when the leaves change in the fall and the green goes away, the chlorophyll dies off, you're left with the orange and yellows of the leaves of the fall of the Northeast. Those are all polyphenols. When the green goes away, you get to see the polyphenol colors underneath the green. So you have all eaten foods that are rich in polyphenol, and you can see right here at this little picture, there's a bunch of different classes of polyphenols. It's a big group, it's a huge umbrella. And under that umbrella of polyphenols, poly meaning multiple, phenols is just a chemical ring called a phenol. So it can have one or two or four different phenol rings. So all the flavonoids that many of you have heard of are all polyphenols, right? And so things like resveratrol, something that you may have heard about in red wine and in grape stems. Resveratrol is a very important polyphenol. Quercetin, something that's in the public knowledge as an anti-inflammatory, it's a polyphenol also. And so citrus bioflavonoids that are important in cancer research and preventing cancer, that's also a polyphenol. So you get the idea. They're everywhere. They're in red wine, not in white, but in red. It's nothing to do with the alcohol. It's the color. They're in dark chocolate, real chocolate. They're in green tea, also white tea. All the herbs and spices have a lot of polyphenols, but we don't eat as many, pound per pound herbs and spices as we do, hopefully, berries and soy and other foods that are rich in polyphenols, like you can see here on the picture, and like we're gonna see in just a second if I can move my slides along. And so why are these compounds important? Well, we used to think up until pretty recently that they were just antioxidants. I don't mean just. They're antioxidants, and that's important, right? Antioxidants neutralize these things called free radicals, which damage your cells. Free radicals are just damaging molecules that can affect the DNA, can affect any part of your body with damage, and antioxidants are the way we counteract the damage from free radicals. And so up until, 10 years ago, we thought that polyphenols were in the group of antioxidants. It turns out that's the most minor of their role. It's still an important role, right? They're still antioxidants, meaning that they still protect our DNA and that they protect our mitochondria also from damage, oxidative stress damage, we call it. But they're so much more important than just antioxidants, it turns out. It turns out that the real benefits of polyphenols is that they are prebiotics, pre-microbiome. So the microbiome is the bugs that live in us, mostly in our gut, but actually everywhere. Our microbiome is the 500 different species of bacteria, mostly that live in our guts. And prebiotics are the things that we need to feed the microbiome. And then there's a new term called postbiotics, which we'll get to here. So what polyphenols do is they feed the good bugs in our gut. And in turn, those good bugs, that microbiome in our gut, make a whole bunch of new compounds that are critical for our health. And we call those postbiotics. And what postbiotics do is huge. And this is why there's so much research and interest in polyphenols as a prebiotic, because their end product after the microbiome process these foods, these polyphenols, they make compounds that heal our gut, that prevent and heal leaky gut, and that make our microbiome more abundant, more varied. And the more variety in your microbiome, it turns out, the better. And they also turn on molecules that are really important for your brain. They make new brain cells. They do all sorts of important things to protect your brain during times of stress. And these molecules that come from polyphenols are also critical for heart and blood vessel function. These are the compounds that end up making something called nitric oxide, which is critical for opening and closing your blood vessels. And I think Dr. Candace is going to talk about that a little bit more. And then maybe most important of all, and the area of research that's still enormously young and exploding, is that these compounds that come from polyphenols via our microbiome affect the way our genes express themselves or don't express themselves, as the case may be. Bad genes are turned off, good genes hopefully are turned on. And some of the key areas of importance for these polyphenols in gene expression is sirtuins, which make NAD. NAD is the energy molecule of mitochondria. It's considered longevity and life, right? And so sirtuins from polyphenols get triggered to make NAD, which is huge for longevity. They also affect something, if you're a nerd, you know, or a doctor, it's called mTOR, which is a signaling pathway that's critical for muscle and life. Essentially, it's a very basic pathway. And also these gene expression regulations from polyphenols affect the way we handle blood sugar, and they lower inflammation and a whole lot more. So that's what polyphenols are all about. And that we know that because there's polyphenols in almost every colorful fruits and vegetables, there are polyphenols in all of our Juice Plus powders, all of them, the essential capsules, all the colors. The Omega blend has polyphenols. Complete is full of polyphenols, and so is Perform from both the soy and the cherry. And Luminate with all the spices and herbs and mushrooms are also full of polyphenols. Chicory is not considered a food, but it's a prebiotic fiber that makes polyphenols. So is artichokes and soy and inulin. But the king of polyphenols, the queen of polyphenols, if you will, are purple, bright red purple things, mostly berries. So berries have an enormous amount of polyphenols. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Corson, who has some wonderful stories about berries. And then we're going to lead into the next slide when she's ready. Candace.
That was just wonderful. So I just wanted to share, briefly my personal story of realizing the impact of the berry blend of Juice Plus. This was developed a year after I started on what we call the duo. So I started 24 plus years ago on what we call the duo, meaning the 20 species that are the Juice Plus vegetable blend and the Juice Plus fruit blend, so fruit and veg. There's a lot of research in those early years on that spectrum of those specific 20 plants, the fruit and veg, and tremendous benefit in terms of immune support, better balance of the immune system, and less systemic inflammation. So those by themselves, the fruit and veg, are powerful. It's a powerful intervention that virtually anyone can add. We start the babies in our family at 6 months old when they start their baby food, around 6 or 7 months when they start baby food. Prior to that, they just need to be nursing. But at that point, when we start the baby food, we start opening the capsules of the fruit and veg and the berry blend, which we're going to talk about more here. But it is a wonderful thing to have this broad spectrum of plant foods, because as Dr. Sachs was saying, it's all about biodiversity. So the more diverse the good germs in our gut, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the right kinds of species that we need working together in huge numbers, they have to eat. They have to eat throughout throughout the day, and not just once, on Saturday. They have to eat, and the only food they can get is what we feed them. So that diversity of plants is what feeds these plant eating organisms. The desirable germs are basically vegan. It doesn't mean we all have to be strict vegans as humans, but it means we need a huge rainbow of plant foods to sustain the different kinds of desirable germs. And that is what we call prebiotic, prebiotic function. And that is plants. So I started on the fruit and veg back 24 plus years ago to help my kids. My husband and I were already eating very well, but we needed to rescue our kids after their school introduced vending machines. And I'm glad it happened, because it opened my eyes to the power of how fast and badly we can go downhill depending on our stress levels and what we're eating and what we're not eating. And then the power of getting back on track by adding what we call one simple change, this broad spectrum of plant powders. We're first in class, best in class, most documented in class plant powders, and which Dr. Sachs and I like to call functional food powders. And so I was already using for 1 year the fruit and vegetable, very pleased and amazed with the wonderful benefits to myself and my husband, my children. And then the berry blend became available, and I knew the quality of the company, the integrity. I started on the berry blend right away. And within 2 months of using and that's called the trio, we call that affectionately the trio, veggie, fruit, and berry blend. Now you have 30 species, including these multiple dark blue and purple excellent berries that are hard to find, and in this excellent quality grown by small farmers for this purpose. Within those 2 months of adding that, a remarkable thing happened for me, which was that I noticed that my brain function, which is important to all of us human beings, definitely improved in a way I did not expect. So I have a strong family history of Alzheimer's. 5 of my family members have died with Alzheimer's, including one parent, 2 grandparents on different sides of the family, first cousin. Um, when I saw the improvement in my brain function from doing that, I realized, I told my husband I plan to never be without this, because I was eating as well as a person can do. This is adding a level of variety and nutritional intensity in a safe and brilliant manner that's proven, that cannot be done any other way that I am aware of. And I love to say, to quote our wonderful Dr. Richard Du Bois, noted expert in infectious disease for many, many years, he said, "There's nothing with or without a prescription that has been shown to do for the human body all the things that Juice Plus has been shown to do." So I love the effect. And very specifically, I will say, I was starting to miss names of acquaintances that I should know. You know what you should know, right? Names of acquaintances I should know. I was having trouble recalling them. And just even kitchen utensils, I would say, could you please hand me the thingy bob? This is not good, people. And within 2 months of adding the berries to the fruit and veg, and I already had great immune benefit from the fruit and veg. Um, just beautiful. And that's been 23 years now of being on what's called the trio with all 3 of them. So I would never want to go back from that. And I'm just eternally grateful that I had that awakening through what happened with my kids. Thanks for that slide, Tamara.
Got ahead of myself there. Sorry.
No, it's perfect.
Go for it.
So this is a slide from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, affectionately known as the JACC, premier cardiology journal. And they chose to publish this, and actually highlighted this as a study at the time, the year it was published, that one of the major studies that cardiologists should read if they're in a hurry. This was one of those studies. And this was done at the University of Maryland. Gary Plotnick and his team had noticed that if you feed people a high fat meal, specifically a high heated fat meal, in other words, you've got a lot of fat, but you've also damaged that fat by heating it, basically turning it into free radicals that go right into the bloodstream. If you do that, and when you do that, and it happens all around the clock every day in America, even starting with our babies when they can start to eat food, if you do that, you're going to get spasm of the arteries. And they figured out a non-invasive, elegant way to measure that by putting a blood pressure cuff on the upper arm, just like you would normally do for a blood pressure reading, leaving it on a little longer than they usually do. This is with the subject's permission. It's a little bit uncomfortable, not terrible. Leaving it on a little bit longer, higher than the blood pressure, just as you would do when you're measuring pressure. And then when you release it, you would have a compensatory ability to expand. And it's not just a passive thing that you've clamped it down and now it just bounces back. No, it's a function of nitric oxide, which Dr. Sachs had mentioned, signaling message, one of the most important signaling messages in the body. Simple molecule, very important, won a Nobel Prize when it was discovered. So when you take off that cuff, because you've restricted flow to the arm, the body instantly fixes that by creating more compensatory, we call it vasodilatation, dilation of the vessels. Vaso is vessels. And when you feed this high fat meal, people don't compensate properly for several hours afterwards. So you have this constriction of blood flow in the brachial artery to the arm. But guess what? It's systemic. It's everywhere in the body. It's not just in the arm. That's just where we see it. by doing it that way. And when we added, Dr. Plotnick added the fruit and veg, there was a big improvement. They did this for 28 days prior to this high-fat meal. It's a fast food meal, and the paper doesn't say what restaurant it's at. You guys could probably guess, but I call it a high-fat meal, burned, high heated fat meal. And when you do the pre-treat for 28 days with the fruit and veg, you get a big improvement, about 66% improvement in that spasm of the arteries. That's a good thing. But when you add the berry, so you're doing the trio, fruit plus veg plus berry, you get way over 90%, 98% improvement. So almost a total protection from that insult. The message is not to take this with your high-fat meals, but it's to see, how much protection can be afforded by a specific injury that is bad for the human body, the brain, the heart, the whole body. And what would happen if people get to do that? They get a chance to learn about it, they get a chance to do this. And we know over time that most people choose to start eating healthier just from the knowledge, the encouragement, and the fact that they feel like eating healthy things. That's a whole other subject of how the microbiome actually can tell us what to eat. That's a whole other discussion. But it's a wonderful study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology.
And
So
just
that
having, thank you, Candace. I don't know, most of you guys don't realize, but just having a supplement in the Journal of American Cardiology is fairly unheard of. It's actually the reason that our science director, Dr. Manfred Lamprecht, who is world famous with over 200 publications to his name, it's what caught his eye about Juice Plus was the fact that we had a study in Jack, because that doesn't happen very often. So that just leads me into our studies. And again, we don't have time to go into more than just a couple or three of them, but I just want you guys to know that we have a body of literature, what we call a body of evidence, meaning now 51 published articles, peer review in major journals like JACC, that Dr. Candace was just talking about. But actually, they're published in over 30 different journals. They're all over the continent, all over the world, rather, on 4 different continents. We've had over 23 randomized clinical trials, which is the gold standard. That's incredibly rare in any world to have 1 or 2, but 23 is fairly unheard of. That's because we've been doing this for 30 years. And because the company has invested a large amount of money and a large amount of, what's the word I'm thinking of? Unknowns. They put themselves out on a limb every time because, well, they want to know that the study design is a good design. It's going to show what they're looking for one way or the other. Once that design is approved, they are completely hands off. They have nothing to do with the way the study is performed, the way the data is collected, the way the study is written up, or which publications they are ultimately put into. The company's completely hands off. So that takes a lot of courage because, by the way, drug companies never do that. They always control the research results. And if they don't like the results, they just bury it. Juice Plus, to their credit, has never done that. So all the studies that have been done are available. They have not ever tried to gag any researchers. And so that's another reason why the quality of this company and the ethics and integrity of this company, as well as its research arm, have been so globally admired. We have over 3,000 now participants studied over these 30 years, and including nearly 50 different university and medical centers, like I said, all over the world. An impact score is a way to calculate the impact, if you will, of every journal, how often it's quoted, how often it's read. And a really good research program has an impact score of maybe 10. 15 would be top. But because we have such amazing research over 30 years published in so many top journals, when you add up all of our impact scores, we're way over 250, which is almost, well, actually is unheard of. No one quite believes it, but that's just the way it is. So again, if you want to know more about the research, please ask the person that invited you. You can get every study linked to PubMed very, very easily. And this is just some of what the research has shown. And again, Candace and I, for lack of time, are going to go just briefly into 2 more studies. But you can see here that when you flood the human body with 30 different fruits, vegetables, and berries, in this picture 36 when you count the omega oils from sea buckthorn and very, very high nutrient seeds, You get amazing results, and it's not because we're a medical treatment. It's not because we're a drug in any way, shape, or form. It's just because our bodies are designed to eat plants, and we get enough protein, we get enough starch, we get enough fat in our world for the most part, but almost none of us get enough colorful plants. And so simply by flooding the body consistently, I think Candace mentioned that it's not the Monday, Friday, Sunday thing. It's every day flooding every cell with all these colorful plants. That in turn results in all of these findings of better dental health, better lung health, better heart health. Almost head to toe, we have found improvements. And so one of the reasons that we have seen such improvements with this huge variety of colorful plants is again back to polyphenols. There's polyphenols in every single of these bottles. And so Candace, would you tell us about this next study that's all about polyphenols and how they have measured polyphenols in people when they take our products?
Absolutely. So when I first heard this study presented, I was with my husband, who's also a physician and highly educated, actually a teacher of doctors. And we were just delighted we just were like, oh my goodness, this is so special. So I'll just be brief here. This study was done at the University of Parma in Italy, and the lead investigator, Letizia Bresciani, she was able to show that when you feed Juice Plus to people, they could measure a very large number of polyphenolic compounds, polyphenols. In fact, it was the highest number of polyphenols she'd seen from nutrition. I mean, that's the way you get it, is from nutrition, just a huge, extraordinary number of these different ones. And then I'm so glad they thought of this. They measured blood with the subject's consent, just a small amount of blood that they checked, and just not over 1 hour or 2 hours, but over several hours. And after 5 hours, they saw something very special, which is that there were different kinds of polyphenols in the bloodstream now that were not in the Juice Plus, but they were made by the bacteria, the good guys that we talk about, the good bacteria in the gut, the microbiome. They were using the polyphenols in Juice Plus to make new polyphenols that we benefit from, and of course they benefit from. So that's really special. That's the postbiotic function that Dr. Sachs was talking about. So we talk about prebiotics. That's the foundational food for the good germs, which are plants. Many different kinds are needed for the many different species for them to thrive, and that makes us healthy. And then probiotics are trying to take the germs themselves. That's a whole other subject, because we can only grow in the lab a tiny fraction of the ones that we lose, let's say from taking antibiotics. Most of them won't grow outside the human gut. And so it's a powerful way. The prebiotic function is actually, in most instances, it's more important. It's more important for everyone than just to take probiotics. Taking prebiotics or eating these plant foods in a wide rainbow, that's the prebiotic function that's critically important. And then we get to see these good germs when they're present, make the postbiotic polyphenols, kinds that weren't in the original feeding, but they're making them for us and themselves, which is quite magical, I think. So that's what we wanted to share there.
And that's what we didn't know umpteen years ago, right? The whole microbiome field is relatively new, but the idea that it's not just an antioxidant that's good, that's the reason we have to eat a lot of colorful vegetables, which is what I was taught, right? What I've been saying for years, it's actually this. It's actually feeding the microbiome that in turn creates all these other compounds. So everything on the end of the graph here was not in Juice Plus, was made by those microbiome good guys, as you call them, Candace. And so because of all that we just explained to you about the polyphenols and how they're changed in the gut and how that in turn helps to heal the gut. We talked about the heart a little bit, but now let's talk about the brain a little bit. So really critical, these polyphenols we know have a huge influence on the brain, way bigger than just antioxidants would. That was one of the first cues that there's something more going on. So we know that polyphenols and the compounds that our microbiome make from polyphenols lower inflammation all throughout the body. And we also know that inflammation in the brain is really bad. Chronic brain inflammation is really, really bad for everything, memory, cognition, you name it. It's the beginning of most dementias. It's just not a good thing. We want to avoid it. So one of the things that people are looking at very carefully is how do we prevent brain inflammation and how do we help the brain in times of stress. And so it turns out that polyphenols are, again, the answer. And so in 2021, the Juice Plus Science Institute published this study, which showed specifically brain function using all three blends, again, fruit, veggie, and berry. But supplementation with all three of our capsules showed that, and there we know that they're all rich in polyphenols because Candace just explained to us that we've measured them, right? We saw in this very elegant, very beautifully done study that there were significant, statistically significant improvements in all the things we want our brain to do in executive function, organizing and deciding what's important, what's not, in short-term memory, in working memory, in attention, and in the speed at which you process, which I think means the speed at which you think, right? So faster thinking, better thinking, and remembering more of what you think was all found to be very significantly improved when people were taking the trio, the all three essential capsules. And that was really fun because this study was done comparing a person to themselves. There was no control group. It was a person either on placebo or the trio, measured their brain function, and then they were switched. If they were on placebo, they got the real thing. If they were on the real thing, they got placebo. And then the brain functions were all measured again. So there was no room for error. This was you against you, with or without Juice Plus, and showed these very tremendous findings, which is exactly, Candace, what you experienced. Exactly, right? When you started taking the berry blend as opposed to just the red and the green. So this is really a fun study. I thought this was a very important brain study, and it turned out I wasn't the only one. So it turns out that because we know that polyphenols and their derivative increase something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. For those of you that are nerds in the room, BDNF will do for the rest of us. What we know is that BDNF is really important. It helps the brain make new brain cells, new neurons. It helps those neurons make new connections. And it helps those cells in our brain survive when we have stress, whether it's breathing polluted air from a fire, from a wildfire, or New York City pollution, or whether it's a brain trauma, an injury, you have a whiplash injury or a head injury or a concussion, or just chronic stress or high blood pressure or a stroke. Any of those times when our brain cells are injured or stressed out, BNDF is really important to protect them. And BNDF, again, comes from polyphenols. So all of this is already kind of known. And lastly, BNDF makes us plastic, right? The brain plasticity means we can use this part or that part. We can think about it this way or that way. We're malleable, we're flexible, right? And that's such an important thing for survival. So like I said, I wasn't the only one that noticed these things. Neither was Dr. Corson. Apparently, the National Institutes of Health also realized that we were the leader in this field, that we had already done 30 years of research proving that we had more polyphenols than anybody else on the market, that they were absorbed, that they worked with the microbiome, that then the microbiome did what it's supposed to do and made all these postbiotic compounds. And so the National Institutes of Health went out of their way to select Juice Plus Berry Blend as the product that they're using in an ongoing study that's about to begin. Don't look for it. It won't be out for a couple of years. It's brand new. But the title of the study is Polyphenols, Microbiome, Cognitive Function, and Alzheimer's Prevention. Everything we talked about tonight, right? The other subtitle of this study is more complicated, the MAVE study. It's microbial mediated, meaning the microbiome makes these flavonoids, and that those in turn help our brain health. Same idea, just a lot more words. This is a very important study. It's a prospective study. It's looking for 1 year going forward, 400 adults, older adults in good health, looking at their brain function, their cognitive function, their gut, their microbiome. They're doing blood, they're doing stool samples, they're doing a very involved long-term study. And they picked Juice Plus Berry Blend. They could have chosen anything, but they know what they're doing. They wanted something that was going to work and that already had the data behind it so that they knew they were going to get good results. So that's the newest of our many studies. We now have 51 published papers based on 30 plus, almost 40 studies. If you're interested in hearing more about them in detail, this is a clinical research summary that doesn't have all of them, but this gives you a very important timeline as to what's been proven, that within hours you can see increase in antioxidant and vitamin nutrient levels in the blood, and on down for the improvements that are seen over time. Anybody can have access to this document. There's actually a 20-minute video that goes along with it by Dr. Mitra Ray. And please ask the person who invited you if you'd like to have a copy of this or a copy of the recording. And that is what we have for this evening for you, those 3 studies, and hopefully a taste of the research. And hopefully, if you'd like to hear more about the Juice Plus research, let us know, let the person who invited you or your team member know. And we would like to bring this kind of information to you on a more regular basis if you'd like. So, Dr. Corson, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate
Thank you so much for doing this and pulling this together. And I always like to remind everyone something dear to my heart and so many of us, that the children get to have this for free. And that's the reason I started. I didn't think I needed it. I just knew it was safe and smart, but I didn't need it. But my children needed it. And the kids won't use it. Usually they won't do this without their parent or grandparent or other loved one who is with them in our Healthy Starts program. So the kids are free up to the age of 26 years old, up to the 26th birthday. And who does that? This is very, very special. So we want to make sure if you have a question about that, ask the person who invited you, because it's a beautiful program that's been going on at least 25 years, and we're so proud of it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And before we close, one more thing. We have a nutraceuticals conference coming up, and some of the original researchers that have done work on plant phytonutrients as well as on Juice Plus will be presenting at our Indianapolis conference in September. Again, if you're a healthcare professional, there are CMEs, continuing medical education credits available for that conference. So another reason to get with the person who invited you, and please join us in Indianapolis to hear firsthand from the researchers who are doing the most innovative research in food and in our health. So again, thank you, Dr. Corson. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Hope to see you next time.